Kayla, Danny, thank you guys so much for being on. We're in Hawkes Quam here in this is considered Sandy or Cottonwood Heights. Cottonwood Heights. Everything kind of blends together up here for me. But family law attorneys, they do great stuff here. Everyone loves them. First question for you guys, just to start off. So 50% of my followers statistically are going to get divorced. What makes you guys a good fit for them to come to you? Or is it a good fit?
You want to start?
I'll start. So I think it comes down to personality more than anything. Mm-hmm. Someone will feel like I'm a good fit or Danny's a good fit, and someone else will come in and feel like we're not a good fit. I think how both Danny and I characterize our practice normally is we're focused on solutions. We know that fighting, the bulldog approach is not effective in family law. So I think clients like working with us because we try to find out a solution as quick and cheap as possible. But when we have to go to court, we're also good at court. So
yeah, I like to tell people I love court and I make a ton of money going to court. So for me, court is very good. But it's not good for my clients. It's not good for the relationships they have to maintain or sometimes repair. And it's certainly not good for the children. So whenever we can avoid that, we do. But if we can't, right, we will go to court and fight. But in terms of if people should hire us, I think it comes down to a relationship and strategy. So, and the client and attorney really have to have a good energy together and have to see eye to eye on strategy. So I think I'm not a salesperson, so I never sell myself to a client. What I do in my initial consults is I try and figure out, do I have a good vibe with this client? Do they have a good vibe with me? Do they trust me? Do I trust them? Right? And do we see eye to eye on the strategy of the case? If we don't see eye to eye on the strategy of the case, I'll let someone know, this is not going to be a good fit. So, but here are 3 attorneys who I know do excellent work. They're different than me, but they'll use a similar strategy that a client is looking for that I don't necessarily want to do. So I think it's very important when picking a family law attorney to pick the right attorney in terms of energy and strategy and not just simply go for the bulldog or the one who had the best referrals or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's sweet. To both points. One, when I saw you guys on Instagram, I saw you kind of make a video about not being the bulldogs, which I really like because, being on any side or just looking in, you're like, come on, like, that's not fun, right? And not saying this has to be fun because it's not, but having a good experience is important. And considering yourself a bulldog, that's not fun. But also matching energies and just characteristics and personalities is huge too. Just making sure the experience is all around as best as it can be. So that's super awesome with you guys, and I like that.
I think to the bulldog point, at the end of the day, if this has to go to court, you want the judge or the commissioner to want to rule in your favor. And if you have an attorney who's beating up on the other side, or there's exhibits where the attorney was looking mean and aggressive, naturally, the judge, the commissioner will not want to rule in your client's favor. So not only does it help with co-parenting and it keeps attorney fees down, but also if you want the outcome of the judge ruling in your favor, act in a way that someone finds you sympathetic. It's no different than going to the movies when you're rooting for, the underdog, or you're rooting for the person who was nice, who, cared for others, who was taking that higher approach. So I would just kind of wrap up that question by saying we would not be a good fit for you if you are wanting that bulldog. To me, that's a red flag if someone calls saying, I want Kayla because I heard she's a bulldog. It's like, I would never describe myself as a bulldog. I'll take things to litigation, but I'm always going to be respectful. I'll advocate for you, but it will always be respectful.
Yeah, and I think too, the bigger picture that I think one individual client might miss is that we are in the same courts every day. So we are seeing the same commissioners and the same judges. We're seeing our other counsel in meetings and in other cases and things like that. And if we ruin our reputation on one case, it hurts our ability to advocate for another case. And we're not willing to do that. We are not. Our reputations are the most valuable thing we own. And we're not willing to hurt our reputation in the service of some big bulldog fight for one particular client. Now, if we believe in the fight and we think there's a reason to advocate in a particular direction, we certainly will, right? And we can be very aggressive in that way. And frankly, our jobs get very contested. And sometimes, and I think Kayla would probably have some experiences like this, but like sometimes we can say and do things that are too much, right? And then we need to reel those back, apologize to the other side, and repair our reputation, because again, that reputation is so important, not only to us, but to our clients. When we show up in court, our clients expect us to have a good reputation with the court, with the other counsel, with the bailiff, things like that.
Yeah.
That's sweet. That's something I haven't even thought about, so that's awesome. Going back to you guys individually, how long have you guys been in the industry? What made you guys want to get in the industry, just so we can learn a little bit about you?
So I've practiced family law. Well, I've been an attorney for 14 years. I started my first year, I was in Washington, D.C. doing a fellowship with Georgetown Law, lobbying in Washington, D.C. And then I came back to Utah because I love Utah and I wanted to have a family in Utah. I think it'd be very difficult to have a family in Washington, D.C. And so, yeah, I got into family law because I felt like it was a place where I could do good in our community. I think that a lawyer who's handling a family law case well does a lot of good for the children in that case. And so that's my primary focus, is how can I help this family go through what might be the most difficult thing they've ever been through? How can I help them move through that experience in the most in the best way that we can find? It's gonna be bumpy, but like, how can we get through it, right? And I think if you get the wrong advocate on the case, it can be extremely destructive for the family and the children. So I do my best to help them through.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I've been practicing for 10 years in May 2025.
Congrats.
Oh, thank you. And I've known for a very long time that I wanted to be a family law attorney. So my best friend growing up, her parents went through a really, really ugly divorce. And so I witnessed that for probably like beginning in 6th grade. And then it really came to a head in 8th grade. And then that's when I committed then and there that I was going to be a family law attorney, because one of her parents got a really kind of aggressive attorney, and the other one got an attorney who really didn't care about the result. And from my child paradigm, what should have happened did not happen, and the exact opposite happened. And then seeing the fallout from that family, and some bad things happened. And so I realized, if you get a really good attorney on the case who cares, like, my friend's background would have been substantially different. So I committed then I'd go to law school, and all my decisions from there, like, I picked my undergrad because it was the most popular pre-law degree. And I, went to law school, and I, clerked at certain places for that. I was a paralegal for a family law attorney before law school. So everything I've done has been very intentional to gear me up to be a family law attorney, even to the point of, when I graduated law school, I was working at a big firm because they had a family law department, and within 6 months, they cut back their family law department because the main attorney left. And I was making a lot of money at that big firm, but I said, I do not want to be at a firm that doesn't have family law. So within 6 months, I was looking to leave to go to a family law firm, and I found that firm, and I worked at truly some of the best family law firms. I've had such a lucky, fortunate career before deciding to partner with Danny in June of last year. Mm-hmm. So our firm is a year and 3 months old, and it's kind of gone gangbusters since then. I mean, our growth, it's just been really exciting. Started Danny and I and our 2 paralegals, and now, we're still adding people, but yeah, it's been pretty wild. We've already had to outgrow one space, and it's been fun.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
That's sweet. What made you guys want to partner together and start this new thing? I'm sure starting anything new in any industry, whether it's a new team, new firm, is tough. So what made you guys want to take that leap of faith and go?
Well, I've known Danny for a long time. I mean, the family law field is very small, especially among kind of like respected attorneys. So I've known her for a very long time. We both served and currently serve on the executive committee of the family law section. And I had heard Danny argue when I was clerking for a judge in law school, and it actually impacted me so much that I wrote a law review note on what she was arguing about for a client. But I always have liked Danny. I always have respected Danny. And for me, it really came to a point in my career where I was going to be a partner at my old firm or go in a different direction. And I had a lunch with Danny that, the discussion came up, and I was really excited. And she shares my same ethos with firm culture and what we want to provide to our staff, but also what kind of attorneys do we want to be? How do we want to, impact clients? And it was just very much aligned. So it was a no-brainer by the time I made the decision.
And for me, when Kayla was in law school, there's a rule that you can practice in the court in law school under somebody's tutelage. And so she was she was arguing a protective order case in the protective order court. And I was sitting in the back of the court just observing. I like to sit in court a lot and just watch. And I just thought, I thought, and I said right then to other, some friends and colleagues, I said, I'm going to work with that girl one day. Mm-hmm. Like, she is amazing. She was absolutely unbelievable in court. And to be a law student at that time, I was completely wowed. And that was probably 10 years ago. And so it kind of went water under the bridge a little bit. I really believe in timing and fate, and so I didn't force it or anything like that. And then when the timing came right, it was really clear to me that the timing was right. And we had been having more discussions, and it was really clear that the timing and the energy was right to move forward with it when we did.
That's awesome. That's sweet.
And it's funny because both of us had those experiences of each other and never knew. So I didn't know that Kayla had that experience when I was arguing in court, and neither did she until we went to lunch 10 years later. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
And we
or I guess 8 years later.
Yeah. And we also have a new business partner who's going to be coming on later this month. And kind of the same thing with him. Just the timing, unfolded in a really great way. And I kind of think things just take care of themselves the way they should. We both very much believe in that kind of mentality of like, we're where we're supposed to be, and it felt right. So you have to follow those hunches too.
Nice. That's awesome. It's funny how life plays out, and it's sweet. I remember, so my new team lead on the team I joined, he had a podcast where he was interviewing kind of like the top agents in the market, doing all these things, just learning about what they're doing for their business, how they grew everything. And I remember when I just got into the industry, I would watch that all the time. And I was like, okay, what are things I can implement? Mm-hmm. And I was like, it'd be so cool to like work with this guy, like do something with him one day, kind of like you guys. And then when the opportunity to join the team that he was bringing into Utah County, the peer group team, I was like, all right. I was like, after the first meeting with him, I told my wife, I was like, okay, I'm going. Mm-hmm. And so it's just weird how everything plays out, but it works out in the end. So
yeah, I love it.
For someone single right now, what's some advice you guys have for them who they want to get married? But what maybe red flags? What advice you have for them to either work on themselves now or keep an eye out on potential partners and personalities to make sure their marriage is successful?
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting to ask this question of divorce attorneys, right? Like, how terrible. It's wild because, what do you say? I mean, like, a divorce attorney could give a checklist, right? Like, make sure you drug and alcohol test them daily, make sure you do background checks, make sure you know them for at least 15 years, but the bottom line is love. We don't deal in corporations, right? We deal in love. We deal in matters of the heart. We deal in matters of fate and spirituality and spiritual connections and motivations and things like that. So I think there has to be a good balance of love and whim and just do it, right? Versus have your head on your shoulders. Like, you can do both. I think that in my life, I try and find a balance in sort of everything. And I think finding the balance between the wild in love moments, like, you don't want to lose that by being too in your head, right? But at the same time, you don't want to get so lost in that you ignore red flags. Like, they are drinking and they're hiding it from you. And that's not consistent with your faith. Or gambling, and it's not consistent with your faith. Or, that there was a little bit of a mishap with another girl and we're just going to let that be water under the bridge. Or, I think that you have to take those red flags seriously, and they're not deal breakers. People ask me about deal breakers. I'm like, they're very few. The deal breakers is whether they're willing to work on it honestly. Can we open this up, unpackage it? Can we go to therapy? Are we both willing to work on it, on this issue? And if we're just expected to brush it under the rug, that's the biggest red flag, I think. So it's just a balance of all of that, I think.
In speaking with a lot of clients over the years, a message that really stood out to me was clients who say, I had a red flag early on, but I chose to ignore it. And I'm thinking of a few clients that come to mind right away where it's like it was an ugly divorce, or it was emotionally traumatic how the divorce played out, how the marriage played out. So I think it's super important for someone to have moments of solitude where they can genuinely check in with their gut. I think your body knows, your body keeps score. So do you believe this is a genuinely good person? Does this person care for you? Do they respect you? Can you trust them? And be willing to get the honest answer, because I think a lot of times it's like, well, I don't really trust him, but I really want kids and I'm getting older, or we already have a wedding plan. Be willing to trust your gut when you know those red flags. And certainly in our world, we hear a lot about narcissistic personality disorder, and that's coming up more often in cases, and maybe it's just because now people have the vocabulary to speak about what's going on. But there was a book that I read recently. I think it's called It's Not You. If that's not the right title, someone can email me and I'll find it, Kayla at hawkesquam.com. But I think it's not about you. I would suggest that people read that if they're dating someone who comes across very charming and it almost feels too good to be true. Just read that and see, I think there even is a checklist. But I know clients who go through a divorce with a narcissist, those are some of the most difficult, ugly cases. So that would be something to just be aware of. And I think there has to just be core principles of trust, respect. I'm big on egalitarian kind of beliefs. Does it feel like a good partnership, someone that will do life with you? And I should also note that we're talking about kind of red flags, but in my personal life, I've been married 13 years now, and I absolutely believe in love and marriage. I know Danny's also very happy in her marriage. So even this being my line of work and me constantly dealing with divorces, I absolutely believe in love and would encourage anyone, if you find the right person, absolutely jump both feet in, because it's a wonderful institution.
One thing I think is tricky about talking, and sometimes on the back end when I see a really messy divorce, and I'm also a guardian ad litem, which means the court appoints me to represent the children in a case. Oh, nice. And I find that the longer I do this job, the more angry I can get at certain people who, because they were going after their own selfish ends in a relationship, in dating and things like that, they jumped into a marriage and started having children right out of the gate, brought children into a destructive relationship. And that's just not fair. It's just not fair. It shouldn't happen. And it's people who are seeking money and security. Their instincts are all out of whack. We all have instincts, sexual instincts, security instincts, social instincts, right? So to make their family happy, they jump into a marriage, or to have security and financial security, they jump into a marriage, or, to meet one of these instincts, they jump in and ignore blatant red flags. Fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. Please don't bring children into it. Just wait a couple years and see if you can handle it, because while you can divorce the person, the children cannot. And me as the guardian ad litem, I'm going to be required until the children turn 18 to find ways to interact with this person you've chosen to be their parent. And it can be, I can't think of the word that's strong enough, devastating for kids because you picked their parent, their other parent, and these kids cannot get away from that being their parent, right? And nor do they want to get away, because every child wants their parents to be loving, kind, and caring, and so that child will always seek out that other person to be loving, kind, and caring, and if they never are, that's another heartbreak, aside from all the abuse they may be exposed to and things like that. So I would just say, if those level of red flags are happening, please consider the kids, the future children. And that may sound extreme, but we deal with extreme cases, and so I don't think it is extreme given the facts that we deal with.
Nice. Oh, I love all that. That's sweet. I definitely being third party and seeing whether it's a sibling or friends in relationships, and then that goes against kind of maybe your faith, or what your morals were, or what you had said to me in the past. Do I tell them, or do I let them figure it out on their own, right? That's a tricky thing. But
yeah, and it's hard because it's small things, right? People go through small things.
Right.
People get through affairs. People get through, not that affairs are small things, but people, that's part of marriage, right? Just going through life.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about that. So I'm talking more about the extreme red flags that people ignore to satisfy their own anxieties.
I think a lot of it too is, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people get in the honeymoon phase, right? You first start dating someone, you're just so happy, or you think you're in love after a week, it's amazing. It's okay. You see past this one thing they do, and then they keep doing it, and you're like, oh, it's okay, but then you kind of not get stuck, but you get in a tough spot sometimes, and so it gets a little tricky, I'm sure. For the people that do kind of keep going, they get married, they're going through their marriage, and with divorce trends right now, what are you guys seeing is kind of the biggest problems that come up, or issues in relationships that eventually bring them to the brink of divorce?
I think relationships have to have the capacity to work on issues, honestly, openly, and really hard work, right? So if somebody has an alcohol and substance abuse problem, are they going to do work on it? And what kind of work? Because it's one thing to have one night of remorse, and it's another thing to do, years and years and years of active recovery work to deal with the substance abuse issue. I just think that there's different issues in every marriage that require a lot of hard work. And, if someone has an anger problem, right? You don't get to just have an anger problem for 30 years. You have an anger problem. You shouldn't have screamed at everybody in the house just then, right? It's time to get into therapy and do some work on your childhood damage that's been done, things like that, and get to the bottom of why you're yelling and screaming at everyone in the house. So I think that marriage just requires a lot of hard work. Everyone's marriage. So when someone's going through one thing with porn addiction or something like that, yes, you and everybody, right? Substance abuse, yes, you and everybody, right? Anger management problems, you want nobody in the neighborhood to know. Well, guess what? Everyone in the neighborhood is having issues like this. The difference with the marriages who are making it and the ones are that both parties are willing to work on themselves, I think.
Yeah, I love it. Go ahead.
Well, so your question, I want to make sure I understood, is what kind of patterns am I seeing that leads to divorce?
Yeah, patterns or things that are kind of things that kind of not necessarily go wrong, but start occurring.
Yeah. I think if I had to think back on some of the most common reasons I've seen for divorce, I think one, infidelity. That creeps up a lot. But I think that kind of leads to the second one, which is parties that start living in silos, where it's the moneyed spouse is very focused on his or her career, and there's travel, and there's late night at the office, and there's the control of money and finances. And then you have the party who's staying at home, who's with the kids, who's taking all the activities on his or her, by his or herself. And you have two people who are not coming together at the end of the night. And then that plays itself out in all sorts of ways, maybe financial control, or, gatekeeping of the children. I think that is a more common dynamic that we see in Utah that maybe isn't as prevalent in other states. And then that dynamic can also lead to things like affairs or, lack of communication. So I feel like that might almost be the most common dynamic that I see leading to divorce. So I think, it's important to, as Danny said, work at your problems, and also things like therapy, I think, are really important. And when you start getting that feeling of like, we haven't connected in a while, okay, what are you guys going to do to try to repair that, instead of noting that and carrying on with these parallel lives?
Sweet.
And I think a couple, like, it changes, right? Like, what you need right now might be church, spirituality, right? And then down the road, we were dealing with another issue. Okay, let's ask some people and talk about, let's read a book together about this issue, right? Okay, now we're dealing with this other issue. We don't know what to do. Let's hop into therapy and talk it through, right? So, like, there's different things that are needed at different times, and the couple has to work together very carefully to meet those hurdles together.
Sweet. Yeah, awesome. That's something, just because like the industry, like you guys probably get this, like, I don't know if you guys give your clients your phone numbers, but there's times where it's like, yeah.
I will not.
Well, you get this, and it's probably like 8:30 on like any night really, and like they're blowing up your phone, and it's like, hey, like I've really had to manage myself in this way. Like, if it's not an emergency, they can wait till tomorrow, because that work-life balance and making sure like you're not work and leaving out the other side into your family. Like that's something I've personally have had to work on, and make sure like I really get to enjoy and spend time with my wife, and make sure like our relationship is continuing to grow together and not get kind of those silos like you were talking about.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's tough.
Yeah. And I think prioritizing things, right? So we talk really clearly with each other, with our staff. What's your priority? Like, we don't hire people whose priority is work.
Love it.
We don't want to work with anybody whose priority is work. Like, everybody in our office has 2 or 3 priorities that are above this work, right? This work is so important to us that if we put it at number 1, we will never see our children.
Yeah.
Like, we love what we do, and we absolutely can be consumed by it. So we have to work really hard, and we check each other on it. Like, you better take the day off. And if I know she's taking a day off, because I know her family comes before her work, and if I know she's taking a day off and she's texting or emailing, we'll check in with each other and be like, like, take the day off, right? Because we know family, spirituality, different things come before work. So even though we love work, when it's time to be with family, it's time to be with family.
And the thing that's beautiful about boundaries, like with you saying, maybe after this time, it's my family time, is people who you want to work with are naturally going to respect that and enjoy working with that. And then people who want you around the clock, they're going to be upset when you don't answer the phone at 11 o'clock. And that's perfect, because then they'll go elsewhere and they'll get a realtor who will answer the phone at all times. I had a realtor who was always available to us, and it made me very uncomfortable, to the point where he answered the phone when he was at an anniversary dinner, and it made me uncomfortable. I wish he wouldn't have answered, because it was not an urgent question. So I think when you take care of yourself and set up your own boundaries, the people who are supposed to be in your life will naturally gravitate. Like Danny was gravitated to how I practice. And if I was a workaholic and I didn't have a strong family life, we probably wouldn't be good partners together. So life kind of takes care of itself when you take care of your own self and your own needs and boundaries.
That's awesome. I really like that. I mean, just the whole thing, like, boundaries are important.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. What advice do you guys have for, you mentioned it, whether maybe we need therapy right now, or focus on religion, or read a book together? What do you guys suggest to couples that might be going through some struggles right now?
There's a therapeutic process called discernment counseling, where it's a limited therapy session. I think there's like maybe 4 to 6, where if a couple's debating whether or not they should get a divorce or whether they're going to fight for their marriage, the point of discernment is to get an answer to that question. So there's 4 to 6 sessions, and at the end of the last session, the couple then decides, are we absolutely 100% committed to our marriage and we're going all in for 6 months? Or do we decide we're not willing to work on this? One couple's out, one of the parties is out, and there's a leaning out party, and maybe that party decides they don't want to focus on the marriage. So then we're headed in the direction of the divorce. And if that's the case, the discernment counselor can work with them on, okay, what kind of divorce do you want? Do you want this to be scorched earth, or do you want to work together and have, kids? What does this look like? So it can be a good fertile ground to lead to the divorce in a more amicable process. Or sometimes people decide we're just going to keep the status quo. Like maybe a parent is really sick, or they're dealing with something with work that they just can't focus on it right now. But if someone's unclear on how to proceed, I think that's a good option. And then obviously, I'm all about marital counseling, individual counseling. I think you can have a much healthier marriage if you have 2 people who are whole, who are not relying on the other to fulfill himself, herself. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I just ditto all of that. And we have a fantastic discernment counselor that we refer a lot in our practice, and her name is Nicole Herway. She has an awesome discernment practice, and we really trust her with our clients. So, and we have other therapists who do great work, and there's a whole slew of therapists who do great work with children who are going through this stuff. And so we have great referrals on that too, and people can contact us just for that information. We're happy to share the information we have on that.
Sweet. So when a couple separates, how often is that successful?
So we get a lot of consults with people coming in who are not ready for divorce. Mm-hmm. And they know, like, this doesn't matter to us. We're happy to talk with people at any stage. And so a lot of those folks say, okay, well, now I have the information about what divorce looks like, because sometimes the divorce is so terrifying just because they don't know what it's going to look like. Yeah. And then once you can tell them this is what it would look like, I think it can ease those fears, and then they can go back and actually work on the relationship and say, I'm going to be fine either way. And now I'm going to go back, and now I know what's at risk, right? What am I going to lose, right? Sometimes the person who comes in, I think, realizes like that their concerns about the marriage, they could get over those because their concerns about the divorce are going to be so much bigger, right? Like, and sometimes the concerns of the marriage are much smaller than what the concerns are going to be in the divorce. So, she spends $200 every month on her hair and her nails. And I'm like, have you checked alimony? Like, alimony is going to be several $1,000s. They're like, oh, maybe. I'm like, just get over the hair and nails, right? Like, you love that she looks pretty. Get over it. And they can. So, but the problem with those kind of consults is we don't keep statistics or anything. So I never know. I always tell people, like, it doesn't matter to us if we hope that you don't come back. We hope that it goes perfectly. Or at least that we never see you again, but we certainly see some back.
Yeah. And I heard this statistic a while back that to me holds true, that by the time someone books a consult with us, on average, they've been thinking about divorce for 2 years. So I think even scheduling a consult with us is scary. You're right, there are definitely people who just do it, just to get the information. But I think by the time we're being consulted, I think it's pretty far along the path normally. So most people who consult with me do end up hiring me occasionally. There's reconciliation, or if they went to another attorney, but normally it seems like it's kind of farther along in the process by the time they come here.
Sweet. Perfect. I think that's interesting to know. The 2-year thing is really interesting. Yeah.
I think people naturally want to fight hard to preserve what they have.
As long as they can.
Yeah, I think no one would think that going through a divorce is going to be easy. I think people do what they can until they kind of know there's no way I can keep this going.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. Yeah, divorce is like the last choice on the block, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or the last house on the block, as they say.
Yeah. Awesome. Going back to therapy, do you guys encourage like pre-marriage counseling or pre-marriage therapy at all, just to learn more?
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
My husband and I went through a premarital therapy. It was like a 12 session. It was put on by the pastor of our church, and I loved it. Like we very quickly realized what we were kind of sticking points where we were not seeing eye to eye. And I'm so grateful we had those conversations early on, and our pastor really helped us work through. And it was, I mean, I have had, I feel like a very kind of easy marriage. My husband's a saint, but I think it was because we did a lot of that work, and we're very good about coming to each other when either one of us is feeling any type of, negative emotion or tired or worn down or any more help or this or that. So I think it's worked. I would definitely encourage it.
Yeah, and we didn't do that. My wife and I were friends before we got married, so we knew each other well before. But once we started dating, it was like, let's book the venue and let's just full throttle ahead. And I just lucked out because, like, she's a saint.
Yeah.
And she did not luck out. She got a short end of that stick for sure.
Yeah. You guys are a great couple. And they had a beautiful wedding.
Yeah, we did.
Nice. Heck yeah. That's awesome. 2 words, or maybe I guess 1 word. Prenup.
We want prenup.
Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on it? Is it something people should consider, or just leave it be?
So I'll speak out of both sides of my mouth on this one. The legal answer is absolutely you should get a prenup if you have any type of sizable asset, not even sizable asset. If there's anything you would want to leave the marriage, making sure you preserve, it's a good document to have. It does not cost hardly anything compared to what a divorce would cost. So the insurance of making sure you don't have a nasty divorce where there's a lot of litigation is very, very smart. That said, did I get a prenup? No, I did not. But also we had nothing when we got married. And for me at the time, it was like a matter of principle. Like, how do you think I would be the type that would go for more than what's fair? And so that at the time felt very something I was against. Obviously, I've evolved since then because I'm now a divorce attorney. But I feel a little torn. I certainly understand why some people don't want it. And my thought is I respect whatever the client wants to do.
Sweet.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on what state you're living in and what state you're divorcing in. In Utah, I feel very confident in the courts to create fair results, to cordon off premarital assets and inheritance and things like that. A business that was started before the marriage is going to be sequestered off. But you get into tricky situations where people come in later in life, or they come in after they've received some inheritance. And, I think if you have already received some inheritance, if you already have real property, if you already have a business that has some equity built up in it, those are the types of cases where you're going to at least want to consult on a prenup and see if it's worth your while. If you're just starting a life together, there's really no point. It's all going to be joint anyway. I think that's the situation when you want a prenup.
Nice. Yeah.
And you also can't include child provisions in the prenup. So you can never say, dad will have full custody, child support will be this. There are certain things you can't contract around.
I did not know that, so that's super cool. But when we were getting married, I was like, want the $75 for my name?
Have it now.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Let's go buy some groceries with it because I got nothing else.
Yeah.
So, I did totally understand where you're coming from. So, say if someone's married, like a couple's married, they're going through relationships kind of on the rocks. When is it absolutely time where you're like, and we kind of talked about this. When is it absolutely time to cut it quits? Like start divorce process and not give up hope, but like give up hope.
Gosh, the 2 things that just flashed in my mind are, 1, ever physical anything, throwing things, breaking anything in the house, pushing, shoving, slapping, anything physical is pretty hard to get around. And then I would say unmitigated substance abuse. That's not, and not the whole, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again, but the actual if there's substance abuse that's not combined with actual recovery, I think that's a losing game. You're never going to win that game. Substances are always going to win that game. And then I would say multiple affairs or lying about affairs. One time, I think people can make their ways through on time. I shouldn't say that because I don't want to like encourage people to like get their one free pass. But like I've seen people make their way through one. I don't know, like multiple transgressions. And I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about, you know, inappropriate conversations with people and not having any boundaries whatsoever. Like part of being in a marriage is having boundaries, right? And knowing how to manage those boundaries. And if someone continually breaks that trust, I think that's pretty hard to get past.
Yeah, I think most people know in their gut when their relationship's already over. So I would, again, say, listen to your gut. You know if it's over. You know if it's something you can't repair. You know if you're modeling behavior that you would absolutely be mortified if your children ever mirrored that behavior. So I trust the individual to know when it's time. But something Danny said that I just wanted to highlight, the domestic violence component. Statistics show that with time, domestic violence normally gets worse. And I think if you are seeing an uptick in violence in your home, you have to be very careful about that. And we just went to a AFCC conference where the presenter was talking about domestic violence, and I thought this was really interesting, that if there's domestic violence that has involved any type of choking or dealing with the airways, the lethality component of that, the chance that someone could be killed because of the domestic violence, skyrockets. So I would just pay attention even to the form of domestic violence, and if you feel afraid in any way, get out, get safe. Legal Aid Society, for example, of Salt Lake City, they offer free protective orders regardless of income, so that's always an option. But yeah, safety to me is huge.
And access to guns as well increases the lethality of an instance.
Good to know. Interesting. Very interesting. Going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, I think you stepped out for a second. Why is it important? So if someone's getting a divorce and they have real property like a home, maybe some rentals, how important, or why is it so important to have a real estate agent come in who knows exactly how to handle it, specializes in it, and you guys know as attorneys can get the job done?
It's the largest asset almost all the time, and not all the time, but often it is the largest asset. And so you want to make sure that you can get top dollar for that property if it's going to be sold, or working with a realtor who can kind of help figure out, is this a cash out refinance situation? But the swing with real estate, it's like if you get a realtor who can get you a little bit more, I mean, oftentimes we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's like, it's worth it to pay to be with the right professional.
Yeah, and with me on my cases, it's really important, and I often have to explain to my clients, like, we're not just looking, you know, for your aunt to help with this case, right? The aunt who moonlights as a realtor on the side might be fine in a normal situation where a couple is selling a home. But in our cases, it's critically important that we have a professional who specializes in real estate, does it full time, is on deck, right, to handle any issues that pop up, and then someone who isn't scared of our cases, right? So someone who is able to talk to both parties, even though they won't talk to themselves, is able to review the decree and remind the parties that the decree says this, here's how we're going to handle the real estate, and isn't scared to broach those conversations. They can be scary conversations, but if you're with the right realtor, the right realtor knows when to bring in the attorneys, knows when to read the decree to the clients, and can really mediate the conversations between the clients and smooth over the sale of the home, which is so critical. It's not only their biggest asset, it's usually their biggest debt as well. So it's really important that it goes smoothly and as fast as possible.
I like it. And what I've seen is like that's the last thing that's really tying everyone together. And so for some people, it's like they're like, I don't care if I get top dollar. I just need to be done with this X, you know. And so being able to, I think, not read the room, but read the situation and have those open conversations. Like, what's important to you? Because if it's top dollar, we're gonna fight for top dollar.
Yeah.
If it's super like extra smooth, quick transaction and like just help you get away or cut ties, then let's make sure we do that for you too. Which some people I feel like don't really realize.
Yep, we have that exact phenomenon in our practice where some clients, they have been with other attorneys and their attorney wasn't listening when they said, I want out as fast as possible, right? We have $100 million. We're splitting $100 million. I don't need 50. I could deal with 48, right? Like, get me out of here so I can go to the beach and be done with this jerk, right?
Yeah.
And their attorneys weren't listening, and we're, diving deep into 3 years of litigation. And they get to me and I'm like, I could get you out. Like, if you're willing to compromise, I can get you out fast. Now, I could get you this much more if we fought hard. And they say, I don't care about that much more. I can earn it in interest fairly quickly, right? And so I think it's a similar dynamic. It's like, what does the client want? Let's follow that path.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
If people are wanting to reach out to you guys, where can they reach out, or where should they reach out?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is the email address office@hawkesquam.com.
Yep, but also we do have a social media page. If you just looked at Hawkes Quam, and we try to be very transparent with here's resources that will help you, here's tips, here's tricks. So following us there. We also have a separate newsletter that's probably going to be once a month, just because we're busy, maybe a little more, but we're going to be, again, sending out more kind of pointers or answering questions. If someone wants to send a question to office@hawkesquam.com, we'll just send out in the newsletter, hey, here was the question asked, here's the answer. And down the pipeline, we're also going to be doing a divorce course that people can, at a much reduced rate, get advice and hear from us directly on like how to calculate alimony and how do you divide retirement and what is the most common custody schedule, how do you calculate child support. So we do this because we want to help with people who otherwise can't afford our services, and because there's many times when we don't have the capacity to take on more cases. We shut down our calendars multiple times throughout the year just from overwhelm, and so this is a way to help people when we're not taking cases either.
Sweet. Awesome.
So all of that you can find on our Instagram or our website too. We'll have information about that when we release it.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you guys so much for being on. And
yeah, thank you for having
awesome.
us.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is fun.
Absolutely.
Sweet.